Palestinians fight in hard-hit areas of Gaza, while a deal emerges to deliver medicine to hostages. Shooter who killed 5 people at Colorado LGBTQ+ club intends to plead guilty to federal hate crimes. U.S. to relist Yemen's Houthis as specially designated global terrorists. AP sources say. Today is Wednesday, January 17, 2024, and this is the Dunkley Report. Palestinian militants have battled Israeli forces in devastated northern Gaza and launched a barrage of rockets from further south. Tuesday's show of force comes more than 100 days into Israel's massive air and ground campaign in the tiny coastal enclave. The north was the first target of Israel's offensive, and entire neighborhoods there have been pulverized. The fighting showed how far Israel still is from achieving its goals of dismantling Hamas and returning scores of hostages captured in the October 7 attack that sparked the war. Meanwhile, France and Qatar say they've brokered a deal between Israel and Hamas to deliver medicine to Israeli hostages in Gaza, as well as additional aid to Palestinians in the besieged territory. Court documents show the shooter who killed 5 people and endangered the lives of over 40 others at an LGBTQ+ nightclub in Colorado Springs plans to plead guilty to new federal charges. A plea agreement made public Tuesday would allow the defendant to avoid the death penalty. The documents show Anderson Aldrich made a deal to plead guilty to 50 hate crime charges and 24 firearm violations. Aldrich previously was sentenced to life in prison after pleading guilty to 5 state charges of murder and 46 counts of attempted murder, one for each person at Club Q during the November 2022 attack. The Biden administration is expected to soon announce plans to redesignate Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen as a specially designated global terrorist. That's according to 2 people familiar with the White House decision and a U.S. official. The move comes as the Houthis have launched dozens of attacks on commercial vessels in the Red Sea. The group says it's attacked the ships in response to Israel's military operations in Gaza in the aftermath of Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel. The 3 people familiar with the decision were not authorized to comment and requested anonymity to discuss the matter ahead of the expected formal announcement. The Red Sea attacks have already caused significant disruptions to global trade. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' team had knocked on 947,000 doors across Iowa while the candidate had visited all 99 counties. It turns out Iowans just weren't into him. On Monday, Iowa Republican caucus participants overwhelmingly chose former President Donald Trump in the absence of a clear alternative with a winning look. Nikki Haley argued she's the one, where DeSantis failed to meet his own expectations of winning Iowa. She will have a lot to prove in New Hampshire next week, based on the depth of feelings for Trump in Iowa. The first voters to cast ballots in the 2024 presidential election sent a clear message from Iowa that their party belongs to Trump. Donald Trump has scored a record victory in the Iowa caucuses and said Tuesday that he wants another big win in New Hampshire. Voters in the New England state get their turn January 23rd to decide just how competitive the Republicans' nominating fight will be as the former president continues to dominate his party. Former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley and Florida Gov. Ron DeSantis face mounting pressure to improve on their distant finishes in Monday's caucuses. Voters in New Hampshire pride themselves on their independent streak as longtime hosts of the nation's first Republican presidential primary. Trump is already campaigning as if he's in a general election rematch with Democratic President Joe Biden. Haley, especially, believes she can compete with Trump in New Hampshire. Former President Donald Trump left his defamation trial before a lawyer told jurors in an opening statement that Trump had used the world's biggest microphone to destroy a New York columnist's reputation after she said he had sexually abused her. Before leaving Tuesday, though, Trump showed his displeasure with the courts and the current trial in particular. The jury must decide what, if anything, Trump owes columnist E. Jean Carroll. Trump, sitting at the defense table, shook his head in disgust as the judge told prospective jurors that another jury had already decided that the former president had sexually abused Carroll in a luxury department store in the 1990s. Iran has launched attacks in Pakistan, targeting what it described as bases for the Sunni militant group Jaish al-Adl, potentially further raising tensions in a Middle East already roiled by Israel's war on Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Pakistan says the strikes Tuesday killed 2 children and wounded 3 others in an assault it described as an unprovoked violation of its airspace. The attack inside of nuclear-armed Pakistan by Iran threatens the relations between the two countries, which long have eyed each other with suspicion while maintaining diplomatic relations. The attack also follows Iranian strikes on Iraq and Syria, as Tehran lashes out following a deadly suicide bombing this month claimed by the Sunni militant group Islamic State. Parts of Oregon are bracing for freezing rain after a weekend of extreme winds knocked down trees and cut power to thousands. Across the U.S., perilously cold weather on Tuesday closed schools and put electricity supplies at risk. Tennessee Valley Authority, which provides electricity to millions of people, asked customers in 7 states to voluntarily cut back. A similar plea came from the grid operator in Texas. New York City's Central Park recorded at least an inch of snow in a day for the first time since 2022. Philadelphia snapped a similar dry streak. In Washington, D.C., a friendly snowball fight broke out on the National Mall during a government snow day. A federal judge has sided with the Biden administration and blocked JetBlue Airways from buying Spirit Airlines. U.S. District Judge William Young said the $3.8 billion deal would reduce competition. The Justice Department sued to block the merger, saying it would drive up fares by eliminating Spirit, the nation's biggest low-cost airline. JetBlue argued that the deal would help consumers by making JetBlue a stronger competitor against bigger rivals that dominate the U.S. air travel market. Young presided over a non-jury trial last year and said in the ruling Tuesday that the government had proven that the merger would substantially lessen competition. A divide between abortion rights activists over whether to include restrictions regarding the viability of the fetus on planned state ballot measures is roiling the movement. Advocates say the fight has resurfaced long-brewing ruptures among reproductive rights advocates, especially in Republican-leaning or closely divided states. Some worry that failing to include such limits will sink their chances of passing abortion protections. The conflict has been especially divisive in Missouri, where conflicting strategies are complicating efforts to push ahead with a ballot measure in a state with one of the nation's strictest abortion bans. Today's news was reported by the Associated Press. This has been the international news for Wednesday, January 17th, 2024. Thanks again for joining us here at the Dunkley Report.